Hello again to another safety class, and today we're going to talk about recording and reporting requirements under OSHA code. So this is under the 29 CFR 1904. So first of all, we're going to talk about what is the purpose of recording and reporting, who is required to record and what is going to be reported, and what are the conditions for posting these reports, for how long are they going to be posted, where are they going to be posted, and so on and so forth. So first of all, the purpose is to determine problem areas in job and develop ways to eliminate or improve those areas. So the primary goal again is to provide a safe work environment for all employees on our work sites. Who must keep what? All non-exempt employers must maintain at each establishment a log of all occupational injuries and illnesses that occur at that location. So the issue now is who is required to keep these logs, what is meant by a non-exempt employer, and who would be an exempt employer in this case. So some basics about the who. The employers who are non-exempts are the employers with more than 10 employees. So if you have 11 employees, you have to file these reports. If you have less than 10, you are basically exempt from that reporting issue. What forms need to be posted or sent? They must be OSHA approved forms, and we're going to look at 3 different forms that OSHA has approved for that particular purpose. When are they going to be posted, and when that reporting needs to take place? Well, every year OSHA randomly selects a group of employers from a large list and sends them a form to fill about an annual survey documenting the number of incidents and accidents and illnesses and so on, and that's for the purpose of statistical purposes. So these are going to be sent to the Bureau of Labor Statistics. That's the statistical wing of the Labor Department in this case, and they're going to keep records on what was the most cited violation, for example, for how many days were people away from sites due to injuries, how many fatalities did we have in this year, and things of that sort. So what are the OSHA forms that we're talking about that needs to be sent to OSHA, filled and sent to OSHA? We have basically 3 different forms. The first one is the 300 log, which is for recordable injuries. We're going to have a look at all of these forms in a second. So the first one is the 300 log for recordable injuries. We're going to learn what is recordable and what is non-recordable. There are some injuries that are really minor. In this case, we don't need to record them or report them. The second one is the 300A summary, which must be posted from February to April for the period of 3 months, basically from February 1st to April 30th. You have to post these, and we're going to talk about where do they need to be posted. And the third one is the 301 form, which is for incident reporting. So the posting requirements, the 300A summary, as we just mentioned, needs to be posted on site from February 1st to April 30th, 3 consecutive months. The posting location, if the project duration exceeds 12 months, it has to be posted on site. If, however, the project duration is less than 12 months, then you can post it at the corporate office of that company. It has to be authenticated, it has to be approved by the company as well, so it has to be signed by a company executive, whether it's the project manager or the corporate safety officer or the CEO of the company. Someone has to sign that report. Here's an example of that OSHA Form 300, which is the log of work-related injuries and illnesses, and it shows that it has to be filled every year, for which year, the establishment name, city and state where the project is or where the company is incorporated. And here we're going to have the case number, employee's name, who was injured or who got ill, the job title, what kind of job did they do, whether a plumber, electrician, welder, secretary, security guard, etc. The date of injury or onset of illness, if it's going to take a while to recover from, when did that illness start, where the event occurred, did it occur on site, and where exactly on site. So the example here is loading dock, or did it occur at the office of the company. Describe injury or illness, parts of body affected, and object substance that directly injured or made person ill. So here, for example, an example is second-degree burns on right forearm for acetylene from acetylene torch. So basically, we're going to write the area that was injured and what was the cause of that injury. And here we're going to put, basically using these 4 categories, check only the most serious result in each case. So whether it was death or days away from work, or there was a transfer from the job, or other recordable cases. So if, for example, we had an employee who was injured and required a job transfer away from the job to recover from that job, we're going to put here days away from work, number of days away from work. So if it's on job transfer, basically you're saying that, okay, we're going to put that employee for clerical services only. They're not going to do any physical work, just reporting, typing reports and things like that. So it's still on job transfer. Then we have to write down for how many days that took place. And if it's away from work, they need to rest at home or in a hospital or whatever, then we're going to mention for how long they were away from work as well. And then check the injury column or choose one type of illness. Again, this form is available in your book, so you can look at the details, because sometimes on the screen here it's very hard to read the details of the form. So this is the OSHA 300 log, and it's going to be maintained on a calendar year basis. Year round you're going to fill it and you're going to submit it on an annual basis. The second form, which is the 300A, which is summary of work-related injuries and illnesses. Again, basically this is a summary of the previous form. So you're going to take the results from the previous form. You don't need to write the employee name or the location of the injury and so on. Just the summary of how many people were injured, for how long, and if it was a reassignment or things like that. So you're going to put the total number of deaths, if any, total number of cases with days away from work, total number of cases with job transfer or restriction, and total number of other recordable cases that did not require any days away from job. So you might have someone who was injured on site, then came back the following day, or continued work on the same day as well. And again, you're going to put the establishment information, your company name, the address, state, and whatever, and the employment information. So what's the annual average number of employees, total hours worked by all employees for last year, and then you're going to have to sign it. And this is what is going to be posted, as we mentioned, from February 1st till April 30th. The third form, which is the 300, this is an additional worksheet to help fill the summary. Basically tells you what to fill and how to fill it and so on. So it's instructions on filling the 300A summary. Here's the 301 injury and illness incident report for each injury, for each incident. So this is the most detailed form that's going to talk about the details of each and every incident. The 300 is going to be collecting all of these. The 300A is going to be summarizing all of these in the more concise format. Now, what if you do not comply by these requirements for record keeping and for reporting? First of all, there's going to be a penalty, financial penalty, and then there might also be imprisonment. So for false statements, you could receive a fine not to exceed $10,000 or imprisonment up to 6 months, or in some excessive cases, both. If it was done intentionally and a repeat violation and so on, it might be both. Other requirements: you must also display on your site an OSHA poster. You must display an OSHA or state poster at each work site. We're going to see an example of that. And for fatality reporting, you must report all fatalities or hospitalization of 3 or more employees, which is basically what we call a severe accident or severe incident. If you have at least one fatality or hospitalization of 3 or more employees, you have to report that within 8 hours. And there's an 800 number, very easy to remember, 321 OSHA. So again, everyone on site should memorize that number and should be able to report such incidents within 8 hours of their occurrence. This is an example of the OSHA standard poster that has information more than OSHA, by the way. It has information about Equal Employment and Family and Medical Leave Act and so on. But this is part of a comprehensive poster that you have to post on site. And when the OSHA inspector comes for inspection, one of the first things they're going to look for is the existence of such a poster, usually in more than one place on the construction site. Some general record keeping criteria. The following are recordables. Remember that not all incidents are recordable. What you're going to put on the form are recordable incidents only. So samples of these recordables include death, that's definitely a recordable, loss of consciousness because it might lead to a more severe injury or might be the result of a severe injury, lost work days, so if there was an employee who was injured and could not complete that work day or was absent from their job for several days, you have to report that. Restricted work or job transfer, again, even if they were not absent from work, but due to the injury they could not do their normal work, you assign them or reassign them to something else, you have to report that. Medical treatment, with some exceptions as we're going to discuss in a minute, and transfer to another job. If again that employee will not be able to continue doing their job on this site and you reassign them to something else, then on another site, then in this case we have to report that as well. So these are recordables. Lost work days are going to be counted as calendar days and not work days. It says work days, it's called work days, but basically it's counted on a calendar day basis. So including weekends, if that employee is not going to be able to return before the weekend counts in these lost work days. If the doctor says take time off, you must count it as lost time even if the employee does not take the time off, as long as it was prescribed by a physician. And the maximum number of work days, of lost work days for an employee is going to be 180 days. Beyond that, they're going to be considered as transferred to another job or left that job. So the counting cap is 180 days. When we talk about restricted work days or job transfer, basically the same thing is going to be counted as calendar days, not just work days, with the 180 days cap. So the counting cap is going to be 180 days. And you stop counting if it's going to be a permanent job transfer, even if it's less than 180 days. If it's going to be a permanent job transfer, they're not going to return to their older job, then in this case you have to stop counting. When we talk about medical treatment, that's going to be recordable. If the employee received medical treatment except for first aid, anything apart from first aid is going to be recordable. First aid is going to be non-recordable. So if someone, for example, has a headache and they need a Tylenol or something like that, that's not going to be considered recordable. If someone just scratched their elbow, for example, and they just needed a Band-Aid or so, that's not a recordable injury. So non-recordable first aid, regardless of who provided the treatment. Whether the treatment was provided on site or in a medical facility, it's still considered first aid, and in this case it's non-recordable. The medical treatment exceptions, as we said, which is non-recordable, include the first aid, and we're going to see a list of examples of that first aid, and diagnostic procedures. So if someone gets an X-ray, for example, or an MRI, that's still considered a medical treatment, but it's an exception from what's going to be recorded, so it's non-recordable. X-rays, blood work, or other tests solely for diagnostic purposes are not recordable. So an example of the first aid non-recordable issues: non-prescription medication, as long as it's off the counter, then it's non-recordable. Tetanus immunizations, which is a standard. If someone falls or someone is injured on site, they usually should get a tetanus immunization. Cleaning, flushing, or soaking wounds, just to clean them, to bandage them, and so on. Band-aids, butterfly bandages, steri-strips. Hot or cold therapy for like pain relief in the back or something like that. Splints, slings, neck collars. Again, this is still considered as a temporary issue. It's a first aid, so it's non-recordable. Drilling nails to relieve pressure and drain blisters. Again, that's still first aid, non-recordable. Other examples include removal of foreign bodies using irrigation or a cotton swab, removal of splinters by irrigation, tweezers, or cotton swab, use of finger guards, massage therapy, we wish to have that everywhere, and drinking fluid for heat stress. Again, that's definitely a first aid and is non-recordable. So basically what we have learned in this very brief lecture is what kind of forms need to be filled, how they're going to be filled. We talked about 3 different forms, the 300, 300A, and the 301. We talked about their posting. They have to be posted on site, especially if the project duration exceeds 12 months. If it's less than 12 months, it can be at the corporate office. It has to be signed. You have to have the OSHA poster also posted on site. And you have to post the 300A form from February 1st to April 30th. You might be invited to participate in a randomly selected survey by OSHA that's going to be for the Bureau of Labor Statistics. And again, you have to inform your employees on how to report incidents, and especially if it's a major incident, whether it was a fatality or an injury of 3 or more employees, it has to be reported within 8 hours. Hopefully everyone is going to comply with these requirements to avoid any additional citations or penalties by OSHA. So I'll see you in another lecture.